Hello and welcome back to Talking Wanderers. My name is Neil Bonner and with me today are our regular Wanderers correspondents Mark Isles and Liam Cronell. Well lads, Liam, you went to Liberty Stadium last week and watched the defeat at Swansea where things were going not too badly until a critical moment. How much did Ricardo Gardner's sending off have a bearing on the result?
A huge impact on the game. At 0-0, Bolton and Owen Coyle would have been delighted with how things had gone, even though they hadn't played particularly well, but they were still in the game. And then within 2 minutes, just an act of stupidity. You can't really describe it any other way. He'd already been booked. That Nathan Dyer was a live wire. He'd nicked the ball away from his initial error, and Gardner just pulled him back. I mean, he barely touched him, in fairness, but we all know nowadays you tug someone back and you're off, and that changed everything. And from then on, Bolton were distinctively second best, and there's only going to be one winner.
What about up to that point?
Well, it was a vast improvement. They set them out 4-5-1. They tried to be solid. Owen Coyle said they only had one shot on goal, Swansea, and he's right in that respect. But they were certainly the better side, Swansea. They were very impressive. The Swans, I have to say. Bolton offered little going forward, but they were still in the game, and sometimes when you're in a run like that, it doesn't matter how you play. If you can scrap and scrape a draw, then you can take confidence from it, but unfortunately that wasn't to be.
And that's something that Bolton aren't doing this season, is it? Games that they're losing games now, they're not getting a draw out of them where they were in the past on occasion.
Been masters of their own downfall on a few occasions. I mean, you look, Gardner being stupid there, as Liam says. Even Klasnic against Norwich, that headbutt just sent them in at half time, a completely different game. Indiscipline and Wheater at Arsenal, the list goes on, and the individual mistakes that have been there for all to see. I think we saw Nigel Reo-Coker going bananas at the weekend, and you can see that there's a degree of frustration creeping into the playing staff at the minute with how things are going. But I think that everybody's got to look at themselves, because it's not happening because they're going out there and playing, a wrong tactical system, or, being sent out there not pumped up enough or too pumped up. It's simply that these are the professional footballers making mistakes on a too regular basis.
I mean, when you look at the two sides on Saturday, I mean, there's not many Swansea players you'd have in that Bolton team, and Gary Cahill, a classic example. England centre-half, outstanding talent. He's got the runaround from Danny Graham for 90 minutes. That shouldn't be happening. Yeah, it is. There's something wrong there.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And then this week, it's Stoke. And if you're looking for any kind of advantages, Stoke played Monday night, 2 days after Bolton, 2 days, a few hours. And again, they play on Thursday night. So that surely has got to stand Bolton in good stead. But they've also got to finish it off with a performance. What chance have they got?
I think Stoke nowadays are a different prospect than maybe a couple of seasons ago, where you had 11 strong players, and if maybe one of them were missing, I think they've invested quite wisely. They've got a good squad.
They can play now, can't they?
They can play football. They can mix it up. I mean, they weren't very good. In fact, they look like the old Stoke against Newcastle last night for us now. Yeah. But I think that Tony Pulis can revolve it around now, and he can play different ways. It's just more about that home form and whether or not the feeling's really right around the Reebok.
I see it as a big sort of milestone, watershed moment for the season. When you date back Wanderers' problems, they go to that 5-0 semi-final defeat. Now, I think they've won just 2 games in the league since then, and this is a great opportunity, given the game Stoke are playing, to get a result, sort of get that monkey off the back with the semi-final and move on. So I've got a good feeling about the weekend. I think Bolton can sort of turn it around.
We tend to sort of over-egg situations really sometimes. We say that when Bolton win a game we think it's okay. When they lose the next game everything's bad. I mean, a draw on Saturday would end a run of 5 straight home defeats, wouldn't it? In a way, a draw home to Stoke would be something to build on, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think I read Liam's piece before. It's spot on. You've got now to draw games, and you've got to start grinding results out. And a gritty draw against Stoke maybe just draws the line in the sand a little bit. But I think that's been the major thing. If they haven't been in the lead in games, I mean, Arsenal, they did it on adrenaline after the semi-final, QPR, and then Wigan That's all they've been managed to get ahead, and they've collapsed some way, whether it be individual mistakes, individual bits of lunacy or whatever. I mean, it needs to stop, really.
Yeah. And of course there was another story that came out yesterday. The annual accounts came out up to June 30th of this year, and it showed that Bolton's debts increased from, was it 93 million to 110 million. Cause for worry, or is it manageable debt?
Well, when you see the figures as we have, on the face of it, it's all quite good. They've reduced it, they've lost 10 million less than they did last year. They've increased turnover, they've cut costs, they've raised things. But the bottom line is they're an extra 17 million pounds in debt, and it's very difficult to see how they can stop that slide. It's hard to see this time next year that they won't be 140, because I don't know, I'm not an accountant, but I don't see where the money's coming from.
I think also on top of what the figures have already come out, there's already another 11 or so million pounds in extras that will go immediately on top of next year's, based upon what's been happening between June and now. Player sales, etc., outweighed for what's coming in. I mean, it's quite worrying. Ultimately, and it always does, it depends on how much money Eddie Davis is prepared to invest, and whatever the who, whys and wherefores of how the money gets circulated within the different pots at Wanderers. Anything that does get spent ultimately comes from the bank that he's got. They're right in saying that it's preferable to own it to a bank, because of course Eddie Davis is a supporter, and there's certain guarantees in there that mean he can't just pull the rug from under the carpet. But it's not a bottomless pit, and I think, as Liam says there, you've got to wonder at what point he may say, right, listen, we've got to start selling, and what impact that would have on the club.
So we'll just have to watch and trust.
The main figure's the scoreline on Saturday.
It certainly is. Yeah. Well, thanks very much, lads.
Okay.
Once again. Well, thanks, lads, and thank you very much for joining us once again on Talking Wanderers. Please join us again next week, where we'll be deliberating over the result of this Saturday's game against Stoke City.